Okay, picture this. You've got this huge plane, an Airbus A330, cruising at 38,000 feet, and then suddenly it starts falling, just falling.
Yeah, and not just falling, but plummeting
Mm.
in just over 4 minutes. Seriously, about the time it takes to toast some bread, it hits the ocean.
It's almost unbelievable. So today we're doing a deep dive into what really happened with Air France Flight 447. It's a story that honestly changed aviation.
It absolutely did. And our goal here isn't just to list the facts, We want to dig into the why. Why did this happen?
Exactly.
So we need to look at the crew, the human side of things, and the weather they were facing, incredibly tough conditions.
Right.
Plus the aircraft itself, the A330, and how it works, or maybe how it doesn't work when things go wrong, and those subtle human factors. Stress, fatigue, training, they all kind of came together.
A perfect storm, almost.
Pretty much. This is really about learning, about understanding what we can take away from such a complex and tragic event.
Okay, let's set the scene. The crew. They'd been in Rio for a few days before this return flight to Paris. And it's a long one, right? Overnight. Flying straight through that, what do pilots call it? The window of circadian low.
Yeah, the WOCL.
Yeah.
Basically, the time your body screams sleep.
Right. And here's a little detail, maybe significant. The first officer, the one who was actually going to be flying during this critical part, he'd brought his wife along for the layover. Now, that sounds fine, but you have to wonder, does that mean maybe he didn't get quite as much solid, undisturbed rest? Maybe others didn't either.
It's a possibility. Definitely a human factor to consider. Even slightly degraded rest, combined with the time zone shift crossing the Atlantic, it can subtly affect how you react, how quickly you think, especially when things suddenly go sideways.
And the route itself wasn't exactly a walk in the park. They had to cross the ITCZ, the Intertropical Convergence Zone.
Ah, yes, the ITCZ. Think of it like the planet's weather engine room over the equator. You get these incredibly powerful thunderstorms building up, massive ones.
How high do they go?
Easily, 50, 60,000 feet, way higher than any airliner flies. And the tricky part, especially over the ocean like this, is they don't always show up well on radar.
Why is that?
They can have less liquid water content compared to storms over land. So the radar sees less, might look less intense, but they can still pack a huge punch.
Yeah.
It's deceptive.
And inside these storms, there's a specific threat, right? Not just turbulence.
Exactly. Supercooled water droplets and soft ice crystals.
Super cooled water. So water that's below freezing but still liquid.
Precisely. Until it hits something solid, like, say, an airplane wing, or, more importantly, a sensor. Then, boom, instant ice.
And the ice crystals.
They form when those droplets hit snowflakes way up high. Not hard like hail, but
Yeah.
big enough you can hear them hitting the plane. The main danger isn't really icing up the wings. The plane can handle that. It's the sheer volume of this stuff.
Clogging the sensors.
Yeah, especially the pitot tubes. Those are critical for measuring airspeed. And this wasn't like a surprise issue. Air France knew about this.
They did.
Oh, yeah. They'd had, I think, something like 9 reported incidents of pitot tubes icing up just like this in the year or so leading up to the accident. They even sent out bulletins to pilots about it.
So pilots should have been aware.
Aware, yes.
Yeah.
They knew it could happen and there was a procedure, but knowing and experiencing, that's different.
Okay, so let's talk about those pitot tubes in the A330 systems. How does that all work?
Right. So pitot tubes measure ram air pressure, basically.
Yeah.
How hard the air is hit into the front of the tube, which gives you airspeed. Then you have static ports, usually flush on the side, measuring ambient air pressure. That's needed for airspeed calculation too, and crucially, for altitude.
Okay.
All that data goes into what are called air data modules, ADMs. Think of them as little computers processing that raw pressure data into usable speed and altitude info for the pilots.
And you said there are multiple sets.
3. Totally independent sets of probes and ADMs. Redundancy is key. If one system fails, the other should take over. In theory,
But even with 3 systems, these specific probes had known issues, and there was a better type available.
there was a newer design, much less prone to this kind of icing. Airbus had actually recommended upgrading.
And this plane, AF447, was scheduled for the upgrade.
Yep, scheduled to get the new probes as soon as it landed back in Paris.
So why wasn't it mandatory? If they knew there was a problem and a fix, why wait, especially if losing airspeed data is so critical?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The thinking at the time, I suppose, was that these icing events were rare and brief, usually just a minute or two.
Okay.
And crucially, there was a procedure. The IAS DOTUS unreliable airspeed procedure. Pilots were trained on it.
They were trained on it.
Between 2008 and 2009, yeah.
Yeah.
The simulator. But And there's a huge but. They only ever practiced it at low altitude.
Why low altitude?
Seemed more critical, maybe, closer to the ground. Plus, the plane performs much better down low. More engine power available, more stable air usually. They never practiced unreliable airspeed, or stall recovery for that matter, up high.
So none of the AF447 pilots had recent high-altitude stall training.
Not on the A330. Their last stall training was years before, on the A320. And that training, it emphasized using thrust, powering out of it. Pitching down was secondary.
Powering out.
That idea that you just push the engines up and climb out of trouble, it works okay low down, but at high altitude, it's a totally different ballgame. And that ingrained response, well, becomes critical later.
Let's shift to the Airbus controls. Fly-by-wire, it's different from older planes, right?
Very different. Your side stick input doesn't directly move control surfaces. It goes to computers, which then interpret what you want and command the surfaces, but always within limits.
Limits, like safety parameters.
Exactly. It makes the plane lighter, more efficient. And it has built-in protections. It's designed to stop you from doing something dangerous like banking too steeply, pitching up too much, or stalling the aircraft.
So it keeps you safe.
In what's called normal law, yes, all protection's active. The plane basically won't let you stall it or lose control. It's incredibly robust.
It's an alternate law.
Yes. If the computers lose reliable data, say, from iced-up pitot tubes, they can't guarantee those protections anymore. So they step back. They revert to alternate law.
And what happens then?
Crucial protections disappear. Stall protection, gone. Bank angle protection, gone. And the way the controls feel changes dramatically.
How so?
Especially roll control. In normal law, you command a roll rate. In alternate law, it's direct. Every tiny input on the stick goes straight to the ailerons. At high altitude, where the air is thin, this makes the plane feel incredibly sensitive, twitchy even.
So understanding that difference, normal versus alternate, is absolutely vital for a pilot, knowing when that safety net vanishes.
Critical, because the system relies on good data. Garbage in, garbage out. If the computers get confused, they basically say, okay, pilot, it's all yours now, good luck, and you need to know what rules you're playing by.
Okay, back to the flight. AF447 is cruising along, nighttime over the Atlantic. They get a message about storms ahead.
Standard procedure, yeah. Company dispatch letting them know.
And the first officer, the pilot flying, starts getting a bit concerned, sees lightning, dims the lights to see better.
They're entering clouds, some light turbulence. They talk about maybe climbing. They were at 35,000 feet. But check their max altitude, 37,000, decided against it.
Why not climb? Just to be safe.
Well, up high, engines have less spare power. You're closer to the coffin corner. The margin between stalling speed and overspeed is much narrower, and the angle of attack needed to stall is lower. It's just less forgiving up there.
Got it.
Around this time, the captain mentions seeing St. Elmo's fire.
What's that?
It's like this electrical discharge, kind of a glow on the windows or wingtips. A sure sign you're in or very near electrically charged clouds. A warning sign.
So things are getting intense, and the captain decides it's time for his rest break.
Yeah, he calls the relief pilot back to the cockpit, briefs the first officer, who now, technically, becomes pilot in command while the captain's resting. The relief pilot, who's actually more senior than the first officer, takes a monitoring role.
Does the captain give them specific instructions about the weather? How to handle it?
Apparently not. Not according to the voice recorder. Maybe he felt they knew what they were doing. Maybe it seemed routine. But yeah, he leaves them to navigate through this developing weather without explicit guidance.
And we talked about fatigue earlier.
Right. The relief pilot mentions he'd just been dozing off. The captain had said something similar earlier. Plus, the relief pilot didn't adjust his seat forward to the standard position. Still kind of reclined.
Not ideal if things suddenly go wrong.
Not ideal at all for quick, precise control inputs. Every little factor starts adding up.
Then, around 02.08 UTC, the sound changes. Heavy rain hitting the cockpit.
Yeah, unmistakable sound. Plus, the first officer notes the temperature outside rising and a smell of ozone. Classic signs they're now deep inside a thunderstorm cell. Lots of electrical activity, ice crystals hitting the fuselage.
And then, the moment everything changed. 02.10.05.
Bang! Autopilot disconnects. Auto throttle disconnects. You get that loud, jarring cavalry charge warning sound. And at the exact same second, a strong gust hits the plane, rolls it sharply to the right.
Wow, just instantaneous chaos.
Total shock. Severe startle effect for the pilots. 1 second routine cruise, the next, alarms, unexpected movement, and suddenly they're hand flying in turbulence. Pure disorientation.
And the instruments. What did they show?
Immediately, fatally wrong. The indicated airspeed just tanks. drops from around 275 knots down to 60 knots, practically zero.
60 knots. In an A330 at cruise. Impossible.
Completely impossible. But that's what the display showed. So the first officer, reacting instinctively, startled, grabs the side stick. He corrects the roll to the left. Okay, but then he pulls back, pitches the nose up.
Pulls up. When the speed seems to have vanished, why?
That's the core of it, isn't it? Instinct, maybe confusion, maybe an ingrained reaction to get away from perceived danger or climb for safety. We don't know for sure, but that nose-up input was the start of the end.
And because the airspeed was unreliable?
Exactly. All three ADRs, the air data computers, were getting bad data. So the flight control system reverts, slams into alternate law.
Protection's gone.
Stall protection gone. Roll control now super sensitive. And the first officer, probably still startled, starts making these big roll inputs. Left, right, overcorrecting, setting up oscillations.
Was there any warning about the stall?
There was. Almost immediately after the disconnect, the stall warning horn sounds. Briefly. Just a chirp almost.
And the relief pilot?
He hears it. Asks, what is that? Clearly confused. Maybe it was too quick. Maybe it just didn't register in the chaos. And the flight directors...
The guidance lines on the display.
Yeah. They vanished because of the bad data. But then, weirdly, they popped back up. And because the plane was now climbing steeply from that pitch-up input, the directors were actually showing the pitch needed to maintain that climb. Utterly misleading.
So confusing. Warnings, weird displays.
And a breakdown in following the procedure. The relief pilot is trying to read the ECAM messages. The electronic warnings calls out lost speeds, calls out alternate law, but doesn't seem to emphasize the critical part. Protection's lost.
Right.
The first officer, still confused, asks something about the engine lever. Instead of grabbing the thrust levers manually like the procedure says, he hits the auto throttle disconnect button again, which, ironically, commanded climb thrust.
You're making things worse, pushing the nose up even more.
Exactly, worsening the energy state when they desperately needed speed, and all this, less than 20 seconds.
Unbelievable. What was the cockpit like, though?
Imagine 10 different ECAM messages scrolling. Master warning, master caution lights flashing, a constant C-chord chime because they're deviating massively from their altitude, and nowhere on the ECAM does it explicitly say unreliable airspeed. They had to figure that out themselves amidst all that noise.
Just sensory overload.
Totally. And the plane is reacting. By now, it's pitched up 12 degrees nose high, climbing like a rocket almost 7,000 feet per minute, burning through airspeed.
Does anyone notice the pitch?
The relief pilot finally does, calls out, "Watch your speed." But maybe he meant vertical speed, because the airspeed was still gone. The first officer makes a small nose-down input, but nowhere near enough.
And then...
Yeah.
The stall warning comes back.
Yes. And this time it stays on. For 45 seconds straight, a continuous blaring warning.
45 seconds, and the reaction.
He pulls back. Harder. Increases pitch to 16 degrees nose up. The stabilizer trims full nose up too. The plane simply doesn't have the energy. It's stalling. Properly stalling.
Why? Why pull back into a stall warning?
It defies logic from the outside, but under that extreme stress, maybe confusion, maybe that ingrained A320 training power out, pitch up, maybe sensory overload meant the warning just wasn't processing. We can't be sure. But he did the exact opposite of what was needed.
Okay, explain stall again simply. It's not about the engine stopping.
Not at all. It's about the wings. The angle of attack, the angle the wing meets the air. If that angle gets too steep, the airflow separates. The wing stops generating lift. Doesn't matter how fast you're going or what the plane's attitude is. Too high an angle, you stall, you fall.
And they hadn't really experienced this.
Not a full stall, not in high altitude.
Yes.
And the Airbus warning is just sound. No stick shaker like a Boeing.
Yeah.
Maybe easier to miss or ignore when you're overwhelmed. He was flying on pure, flawed instinct.
So the plane stalls. What happens next? Buffeting.
Violent buffeting starts shaking the whole airframe. Very different from turbulence. His reaction, full TOGA thrust, jam the levers forward.
But you said they didn't have enough power up there.
Exactly. At that altitude, TOGA thrust wasn't enough to arrest the descent, let alone accelerate. The relief pilot tries to coach him. Minimal lateral inputs, trying to calm the roll oscillations. Doesn't work. Still big side stick movements.
But they're stalled, shaking, engines roaring, falling.
They actually climb a tiny bit more from momentum, hit almost 38,000 feet, their peak altitude. Then, yeah, they start to fall.
Why didn't the relief pilot take over?
It happened so fast. Maybe a minute total from the disconnect to the deep stall.
Yeah.
And the side sticks aren't linked. He couldn't feel those nose-up inputs. There's also CRM crew resource management. The habit is usually to support, to prompt, not just snatch controls instantly unless it's unavoidable. Maybe he just didn't realize how bad it was, how persistent the input was.
Okay, now for the really cruel part. The pitot tubes clear up.
Briefly, yeah. The ice melts or blows clear. Airspeed comes back for a second. But
Well,
then, the angle of attack is now so extreme, maybe 40 degrees nose up relative to the airflow, that the pressure difference between the pitot and static ports basically disappears again. So the airspeed reading vanishes. Again.
Oh, wow.
And worse. Because the calculated airspeed drops below 60 knots, the flight control computer thinks, we must be on the ground, and it inhibits the stall warning.
It stops the warning.
Stops it dead. So when the captain walks back onto the flight deck,
He arrives to find
total chaos. Plane descending incredibly fast from 35,000 feet, 10 ECAM warnings still going off, violent shaking, but crucially, no stall warning.
He must have thought the plane was falling apart.
Or some massive system failure, not a stall. You hear his shock on the CVR, "What are you doing?" And the first officer's reply, "I don't have control anymore." Just utter confusion.
And you mentioned the first officer's reaction, pulling back, might link to his training.
It's a plausible theory. In normal law, for things like wind shear escape, the procedure is pull full back on the stick, apply toe GA thrust. The plane protects itself, climbs at its maximum performance without stalling.
So under extreme stress, he defaulted to that safe, normal law procedure.
Possibly, even though they were an alternate law where that procedure is completely wrong. It's a classic example of stress-induced regression to training, even when the context has changed. Understandable, maybe, but fatal.
The final minutes. Desperate.
Utterly. First officer pulls the thrust levers to idle, the nose drops slightly, speed increases just enough.
Let me guess. The stall warning comes back on.
Bingo. Stall warning starts blaring again. And now, maybe thinking they're going too fast, he deploys the speed brakes.
Speed brakes while stalled.
Makes no sense. This compounding confusion. You hear conflicting calls on the CVR. Go down. No, you climb. Dual input warnings start sounding. They're both on the controls, fighting each other.
When did they finally realize?
It seems the penny dropped for the captain when the first officer says something like, "But I've been at max nose up for a while." You almost hear the realization dawn. But it's far too late.
And the GPWS, the ground proximity warning.
It starts yelling, "Sink rate, pull up," which is, again, the absolute worst thing to do in a stall. But instinct takes over. They all pull back.
The very end.
The first officer hits his priority takeover button, locking out the other pilot, keeps pulling back. You hear him cry out, "Damn, we're going to crash. This can't be true. What's happening?"
Just heartbreaking.
The captain calls 10 degrees pitch up, trying to salvage something. Relief pilot tries one last push forward, but he's locked out. And it's 02.1.28 UDC impact, 45-degree nose-down angle, falling at almost 11,000 feet per minute. Instantaneous, catastrophic. All 228 souls lost.
And on the ground, silence. Nobody knew for hours.
4 different air traffic control centers.
Yeah.
Nobody realized they were gone. Took hours to declare them missing. Then that massive search began.
2 years.
2 years of searching the Atlantic, finally found the wreckage incredibly deep, 12,800 feet down. And against all odds, recovered the CVR and FDR, the black boxes. That's how you know all this detail.
The final report. What were the main conclusions?
Stark, really. No actual aircraft component failed. The pitot tubes got overwhelmed, yes, but that shouldn't have been catastrophic. It triggered the disconnects, the warnings, the startle. They failed to apply the unreliable airspeed procedure correctly. The pilot flying's initial pitch-up, driven by startle and confusion, led directly to the stall. And crucially, the stall was never identified, never verbalized. So they never even tried the right recovery actions.
That lack of identification. Wow. The whole industry must have reacted.
Big time. Huge shockwaves led directly to major safety changes. The biggest was probably mandated upset prevention and recovery training, UPRT.
What does that involve?
Specific training on handling high-altitude flight characteristics, recognizing and recovering from stalls, dealing with startle effect, giving pilots actual experience with these extreme situations in the simulator.
And the unreliable airspeed procedure itself.
Revised. New memory items.
Yeah.
The absolute priority now, disconnect automatics, set pitch and power first. Fly the airplane. Keep it stable. Then figure out what's wrong. Aviate, navigate, communicate. In that order, always aviate first.
Other changes. Cockpit cameras. Better probes.
Recommendations for cameras came up,
Yeah.
Definitely improvements to PEEP probes, making them less susceptible, and longer-lasting batteries for black box pingers to make finding them easier.
So the big lessons for pilots, what are they?
Fundamentally, know your aircraft, inside and out. Understand how systems degrade, not just how they work perfectly. Know the difference between flying high and flying low. And don't just memorize procedures. Understand the why. Be able to adapt. And maybe the absolute core message for any pilot listening: never, ever forget to fly the aircraft. If something startling happens, autopilot kicks off, alarms go off, remember pitch and power. Pitch and power keeps you safe. Get the aircraft stable. Then you can figure out the problem. Keep flying.
It's such a sobering story. Beyond all the technical details we've covered in this deep dive, it really makes you think, doesn't it, about how we humans react under extreme pressure in these high-stakes environments. What about your own ingrained responses, those things you do automatically when stressed? How might understanding those prepare you for the completely unexpected, whatever field you're in?